86 in the 155 weight class. He received All-State and All-American honors and finished high school with a 4.0 GPA. He went on to wrestle at the University of Minnesota and continues to give back to his sport today as a volunteer coach. He was a high school coach for the New Ulm Public High School, where he coached several state entrants, and spent 3 years as a volunteer coach for a non-profit club wrestling team called Dynamic at North Carolina State University campus. 2012 Hall of Fame member Steve DuVal will be introduced by his high school coach, Mr. Bill Hickman.
Thank you, Phil. He just did most of my speech. Didn't leave much for me, but anyway, I want to congratulate all the Hall of Famers this year. Committee, you did a great job. It's a great class. I'm honored to be one of the introducers here. It's my privilege to introduce Steve DuVal. I was lucky enough to be his coach for 3 years back in the mid-'80s. And when Steve came in, if you've been watched the video at all, they had a lot of pictures of him standing on pedestals and stuff. Well, he came in with quite a resume already. He had been very active in the kid wrestling over the years, and he did very well. So when he came in, my #1 goal was, don't screw him up. And as it turned out, I think I did a pretty good job of not screwing him up. So, Steve does have quite a list of accomplishments, and some of them Phil already went over, but I got my list here, and I'm going to go through it anyway so I don't lose my place. 3 years on varsity, his win-loss record was 80-15. 10 of those losses came as a sophomore. He was a 3-time conference champ. He was a 3-time state entrant, 2-time region champ, and 1-time runner-up. In 1986, he was the 155-pound Minnesota State High School champion. And in his championship bout, he wrestled one of the really elite wrestlers in Minnesota at that time. And if anybody's followed wrestling or university wrestling over the years, they probably recognize his name. But anyway, he beat him in just a great match, and Steve is our last Park Wrestling State High School champion. So thinking Park, maybe this will be the year we get one. It's been a while, so good luck there. Besides being a state champ, he was first team All-State academic team. He was a member of a Minnesota All-Star team that wrestled the Wisconsin All-Stars, and I remember that match vividly. Steve threw the kid late in the bout with a big throw to win the match. It was very exciting. As mentioned, he was a high school All-American. And it was no coincidence that during Steve's tenure we had very successful teams. I like to refer to it as the glory years. And at this time we had 3 conference championship teams. We were region champs twice, runner-up once, and we were in the state tournament twice, and in 1985 we finished 4th. And Steve was one of our team captains. Steve kind of went the extra mile. He did a lot of off-season wrestling. And that there's opportunities available in the Olympic styles of wrestling, and he was very successful throughout all these years of doing that. But in the summer of 1986, Steve really kind of hit a pinnacle. He won the National Junior Greco-Roman Championship, winning in a field of 78 of the very best high school wrestlers in the United States. It was really quite an accomplishment. His brother Dave brought in his old championship bracket from the state tournament. Well, the national tournament one would almost hit the ceiling there with all the participants in it. So I remember that one distinctly. Besides all these great accomplishments, I remember Steve for other reasons. He was just a coach's dream. I heard from the administration and the staff every now and then about Steve DuVal, but it wasn't discipline problems, it was complimentary. What a fine student he was and what a good citizen he was, that sort of thing. And he was a wonderful student athlete. As Phil mentioned, He worked very hard in the classroom. he graduated with a 4.0 GPA. As an athlete, he trained extremely hard. He paid his dues in the weight room. In the summer months, and this is one of my stories, but he would be waiting for me at 6 o'clock in the morning down the street, waiting to run with me. At the time I was running, so by the time I got to be 80 years old, I'd still be able to get in a boat and have Whitbread net my fish for me. Steve was there for a different reason. He was running to be a champion. In those years, we had a lot of team success. And that was because we had a bunch of very good student athletes. And I'm looking out here, and there's some of them here, Scott Halleck, Mark Duffy, Steve's brother Dave, and they were on those glory year teams, and they were why we were so tough. The practices we had, and we had a lot of pride in our practices. It was literally a war in there sometimes. These guys paid the price, and we were good. And I always think back, I didn't have to do much motivating. They took that upon themselves. In fact, there were some days, you know, where it's set 5:30, practice is done. We need to work on a few more things, and they'd keep going. And, you know, I had to remind them every now and then. I had 2 small children at home and a wife with supper ready. We got to get out of here. I guess you sacrifice sometimes. And another little tidbit. Back in the day, I used to like to wrestle these guys. Now, you got to remember, this is 25, 30 years ago, and I pictured myself as a pretty tough guy, you know, and kind of it's one of those things, the older you get, the tougher you were. But there were a few of these guys that, when it came, now I don't think I'll wrestle with these guys, you know, I don't want to get hurt. Steve was one of them. He could throw anybody, and if I landed wrong, you know, I might not be up here today, so I passed him. After high school, Steve went on to wrestle at South Dakota State for a year, where he's a varsity wrestler, and then he transferred and was a varsity wrestler at the University of Minnesota. And it was there that he received his degree in engineering. And as Phil said, he's been all over. He's coached I worked out by New Ulm, coached there. He's been in France. I don't know if he coached any wrestling there or not. But then in North Carolina, he also was involved in the wrestling. So it was with great joy a year and a half ago, Coach LaBrosse came up to me and says, "Hey, guess what? Steve DuVal's moving back into town." And what a blessing. Brought back a wrestler, and he's a wonderful family. And he is actively involved in the wrestling as a volunteer coach. Summing things up, 29 years ago is right about now, Steve started representing Park High School Wrestling and Park High School with a lot of class. And as it turns out, he's still doing it today. Congratulations, Steve.
Thank you, Bill. Bill, that was very touching, and I really appreciate having you be here as part of this this evening. It's been kind of fun. The food's been great, conversation's been great, and I want to say first, thanks, Phil, for putting this event together, and thank you, Bill, for the wonderful introduction. I am honored to join the Hall of Fame members today. I would like to thank the Hall of Fame committee and of course also my nominators, which consist of one of the Hall of Fame members, Michelle LeBeau, and my wrestling coach, Bill Hickman, and my sister-in-law, Sherry Kruzewski. We have family and friends here today as well, but before I introduce them, I also want to thank my parents, my mom, Alice, and my dad, Norbert. So my brother, and I'm lucky to have my brother and sister here today. My brother, I think Bill mentioned, was 4th in the state. And Phil, maybe you can help me get my brother's picture hung up in the hallway for that. And then my sister was a state track champion for her high school in Somerset, Wisconsin. So thanks for being here. My cousin and mentor, Mark DuVal, is also here. My wife, Michelle, and my kids, Jordan, Daniel, and Noah. And my good friend and mentor, a retired history teacher from Park, John Hampy, and his wife, Sue. One final group I'd like to acknowledge is my classmates, wrestling teammates actually, from the class of '86. Dennis Glass, Vince Preem, Tim McConville, Mark Duffy, and co-head coach for today, for this year's team, Scott Halleck and Bob Bernier. This posse of people all contributed to making this day possible, and I hope you enjoy hearing a collection of stories which explain my journey and how I got here today. So tonight, I would like to share my thoughts about three major influences on my life. The first is the city of Cottage Grove. I want to talk a little bit about that. And then Park High School. And then I'll talk about the sport of wrestling. So first, Cottage Grove, the community of Cottage Grove, can be summed up by 4 words. I love this town. I do love this town and community of Cottage Grove. So how do you know if you love the city in which you live? Sometimes you really don't know until after you've been away from it. And I've been away from Cottage Grove several times during my life. So I left Cottage Grove from 1986 to 2011. That's 25 years to explore the rest of the world. I've lived on the West Coast in California, near Hollywood and the Malibu beaches. I've lived on the East Coast near Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head Island, and the Blue Ridge Mountains. I've lived in Europe near the Eiffel Tower, the Church of Notre Dame, and the beaches of Normandy. I've traveled to see Big Ben in England, the Colosseum and the ruins of Rome in Italy. These monuments are all amazing. In fact, many times have brought me to tears. But no matter where I went, the community of Cottage Grove has always been, a rock and foundation for me. After all, my hometown is Cottage Grove, Minnesota. In January 2011, I got a call from my current boss at 3M in St. Paul, informing me that we were moving back to Minnesota. I sat my family down to inform them of the news and to ask them which community they wanted to live in. My son Daniel immediately popped up and said, "Dad, I think it'd be cool to go to your old high school. Let's move to Cottage Grove." So that's how I'm here today. So going back a little further, my parents came to Cottage Grove area in 1965. I went to Crestview Elementary, but because of a fairly painful divorce, my mom decided to move me and my sister to Somerset, Wisconsin in 1979. My brother and dad stayed and lived in Cottage Grove during that time. Then in 1982, after a very difficult freshman year of high school, I sat my mom down on the couch and explained my dream and a new direction for my life. I said, "Mom, I want to go to Park High School. And I want to live with my dad and my brother, and I want to get a wrestling scholarship." My mom did cry over this, but she knew how serious I was about this new direction. My dad and my brother welcomed me with open arms, and my days in Cottage Grove started again. So from 1983 to 1986, I came back to Park to make a better life for my future wife and kids. Little did I know that I would also find my wife and soulmate in addition to a wrestling scholarship. It took me a long time to realize that being a state champion isn't what makes life great. It's all about the relationships and the climb, and even more important, how do you use this experience later in life? So that's Cottage Grove. Now on to Park High School. Park High School is made of great facilities, students who became lifelong friends, and leaders who shaped and molded me into the person I am today. I want to dedicate this section to the teachers. I have a long list of teachers that were special to me. First and foremost, my dear friend, John Hamby. He called his students Doctor, Reverend, Chief, and Scholar. John challenged me in positive ways to make sure that sports was helping my education. In fact, I wrote an essay for him 28 years ago, and he saved it. This is the actual essay that I wrote to John about the 12 positive aspects of sports in my life, because John was very concerned that sports was making a positive influence in my life. So here's the 12 from the actual essay. It helps me make friends. The feeling of accomplishment is number 2. Number 3 is it's an escape. Number 4, it helps me to be organized. Number 5, it teaches dedication. Number 6, it teaches an element of hard work. Number 7, sportsmanship. Number 8, teamwork. Number 9 is improvement is more important than being a winner. Number 10 is courage. Number 11 is preparation. And number 12, it teaches you to set goals. So, John, thanks for keeping that. I'll hang it up on my, I don't know, my mirror in the bathroom or something. So lots of special teachers, you know, and John has been certainly tops in this area. I wanted to be a history teacher, actually, like John. And even though John was a history teacher, he says, DuVal, do not be a history teacher. He said there's no jobs and they don't make any money. So John mentored me into choosing engineering. And engineering's been good to me. It brought me to 3M, and 3M brought me back to Cottage Grove. So it's a good deal. Over the years, John became a father figure to me, and he even visited me while I was living in France. There are several other teachers who also influenced me. Lost my place, sorry about that. Who also influenced me, and I want to mention them tonight. First of all, Costigan and McDougall. Their chemistry class kicked my butt. So, and I see their name, I think the cafeteria, excuse me, the concessions is named after them. So, great teachers, great teachers. The next is Mr. Moybon, if anybody remembers Mr. Moybon. He was a math teacher at Park. His favorite question, I don't know if you can say it or not, Mr. Moybon's favorite question, DuVal, are you a full-time student or a part-time student? You gotta pick one, which are you? So, Mr. Moybon, I still remember that today. And then Mr. Mark Sickich. I saw Mark was my football coach back in the day, and I can't go into detail about some of the problems I was having at that time, but Mark, I know you're aware of what those teenage problems, let's call it. And he brought me through a tough time, so thank you, Mark Sickich. Let's see, Dean Hodak. I saw that he was on the committee at one time. And he's here. All right, well, I'll have to look him up later, but hopefully you won't hold this against me. He was a great computer teacher with a practical advice. He says, DuVal, when you throw a rock into a pack of dogs, the one that gets hit is the one that yelps. And last but not least, Bill Hickman, my wrestling coach. He was the right coach at the right time for me. Calm, steady, pushed just the right amount. And his famous saying for me was, was the whole team, make excuses to be in practice, not make excuses to be out of practice. And that always stuck with me. Okay, let's talk a little bit about wrestling. This is kind of the final area, and then we'll wrap it up. And I've just got in big bold letters, wrestling isn't a game. Wrestling is not a game. Wrestling is combat. It's a combat sport. There is no other high school sport where physical, brutal, humbling domination of your opponent is the goal. A round of golf, a pickup game of basketball, throwing the football around, playing catch with a baseball, kicking the soccer ball, going for a swim, can all be fun and a great father-son activity. This cannot be said for wrestling. It's a hard, difficult sport that very few choose to do. They say that wrestling is an individual sport, but I'm not so sure. My three greatest memories were team wins. Winning the region championship in '84 and '85, going to state, and the team placing fourth. I also remember passing out, almost passing out from exhaustion, not from the match, but from yelling and screaming for my teammates. My mentor and cousin, Mark DuVal, kept me grounded in my faith during this time. He pointed out that the sport of wrestling is one of the few mentioned in the Bible. In Genesis 32:24, Jacob wrestled God. And Jacob was so tough, God had to cheat and break his hip to prevent from losing. You look it up. I encourage you to read the story. It's all true. Wrestling doesn't have a large following. I remember going to visit my grandma up in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin on Thanksgiving, and she asked me, "Stephen dear, doesn't it hurt when those boys pull your hair inside of the ring? And who is this Hulk Hogan guy?" Grandma, there's a different type of wrestling. I had the privilege of being on the same team as Hall of Fame member Perry Fink. He placed third twice and won the state championship in 1985. He didn't know it, but I watched everything he did. My locker was next to him, and so I watched what he ate, what he drank, his intensity in practice, what he did at school, what he did outside of school. I wanted to be Perry Fink. In the end, our wrestling styles were very different, so eventually I had to find my own path to achieve my dream for a state wrestling championship. My senior year, I read a biography written by Bruce Jenner. It taught me to have ultimate discipline and to always ask the question, is this going to make me a better wrestler, or will this make me a state champion? If the answer was no, I didn't do it. I remember using this disciplined approach to life when I met my wife and soulmate, Michelle. Shortly after our relationship began, I told her, "Michelle, I just want you to know, you're number 5 on my list." With a puzzled look on her face, she asked for an explanation. I said, "God, family, school, wrestling, and then you." I think she wanted to slap me. I don't know why she stayed with me. Okay, heading into my senior year wrestling, I was ranked number 1 in the state, and so I thought I would go undefeated. When I lost badly in a tournament just before Christmas, I was devastated to the point where I questioned my ability to win the state tournament. There are 2 special people in the room here today who helped me get back on track. Park's current co-head coach and teammate Scott Halleck, and my brother Dave DuVal. I remember Scott approaching me that day after I lost my match, and I was sitting in the corner by myself, feeling sorry for myself, thinking about how I'm going to give up the dream, when Scott approached me and said, "Steve, I think you can still do it. I really do. I think you can win that state championship." And that had a huge impression on me. And then a few days later, at the Christmas break, my brother came up to the high school practice. My brother challenged me to a match that day, and all those feelings of brother rivalry came back. You see, my brother, to my knowledge, has never ever let me win a wrestling match. And there were many matches, including the ones in our living room. Well, on that day, I emerged the winner. Now I knew I was ready, and beating my brother was kind of a rite of passage, and he gave me the confidence to continue. On March 3rd, 1986, I achieved my dream of winning a state title against Marty Morgan. Marty was from a long line of Morgan brothers. all who were state champs, except for Marty. I'll come back to Marty. There's a good news on the Marty situation. After the match with Marty, I remember the adrenaline rush being so intense. I know people were talking to me, but I could not hear them. I was glad that my last match in a park uniform ended on such a high note. My wrestling career in college did not, I would say, end up on a high note. My first year of college, I joined my wrestling hero, Perry Fink, on the South Dakota State wrestling team. I had a season-ending knee injury just before the Division II Nationals. The guy who wrestled as my backup on the team filled in for me at Division II Nationals and earned All-American honors. I transferred colleges my second year to the University of Minnesota to wrestle with my state finals buddy, Marty Morgan. After a year of mediocre results in the classroom in wrestling, I decided to terminate my wrestling career and dedicate myself to engineering. Marty Morgan went on to be the NCAA Division I champion for the University of Minnesota and far exceed the careers of his state champion brothers. So I'll wrap up with a couple of comments on the Hall of Fame. You know, I really believe that it's my job to fill the Hall of Fame with future members. Getting into the Hall of Fame with a dream to become a state champion is how it all started. I just wanted to win wrestling matches so I could pay for college. I'm thankful it became much more than that. It was more about a great community, a great high school, and a sport, which challenged me every day to become better than I was before. And for sure it took a village of great people who are sitting here tonight, who believed in me and helped me have the courage to keep going. In the years ahead, it's my goal to help park wrestlers achieve their very best and hopefully be part of the process of adding new members into the Hall of Fame. I hope I'm still around to hear their story and about the great community of Cottage Grove, how the teachers of Park changed their lives, and how they used their experience in a brutal sport to become a better person to give back to so that the Hall of Fame continues to fill up with new members. Thank you for this award. It's an honor which I will cherish forever.